You know what time it is. You know what week it is. Regionals weekend of college baseball. I mean, I don't know what to say. John, where did the season go? 5 minutes ago, we're giving out our preseason best bets of teams that can win it all. And now we're in the final stretch of the college baseball season. And luckily, they saved the best for last.
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, it's the best weekend of the year. I mean, March Madness, sure, you've got all your games, but that's across 4 days, and they split up all the games. Tomorrow, we've literally got every single team playing, so it's going to be quite the weekend. I'm excited.
Absolutely. I think, the great part about this tournament is there's just so much action on all day. And, we love the college basketball tournament. I personally think, and I'm not a huge college basketball guy until really March, like most people. I happen to think that college basketball's postseason is the second best behind this. You have a lot more games. You have a much longer weekend. And I think personally it lasts a little bit longer, just the way the format is set up, how you have to win so many games in order to advance and ultimately win the College World Series. But, I think, and I'm sure you would probably agree with me, the regional round is probably the toughest round in the entire tournament.
Yeah, I mean, at first that's where all your nerves are, right? All these teams, like, yeah, sure, they want to win their conference tournaments, but a lot of them know that that's not what their end goal is, right? They want to get to regionals, they want to get to super regionals, they want to get to Omaha, and that's their goal. So you see a lot of these big teams come in, and they're playing at home too. They can feel that crowd's energy, so they have a lot of nerves. And then, I mean, a lot of these teams have easier matchups the first day, but I mean, anything can happen. And, especially if some of these teams aren't pitching their best pitchers on the first day, it can get dicey.
Absolutely. It definitely can get dicey. And, we have a lot of games for tomorrow's slate. It's a lot of the ones versus fours. That's half the board. And twos, threes obviously makes up the other half. Personally, I think there's only maybe 4 or 5 really good 2 versus 3 games. The other ones I'm really not that interested in because I don't think, those teams are really capable of making that big run or even getting out of this region. But, before we get into that, what are some of your predictions maybe for this regional round in terms of a team that you're looking at that you think a lot of people are a little bit sleeping on that might be able to make a deep run here?
Yeah. I mean, I think in general, like these first few regionals, I don't think there are going to be too many upsets early, but I do think once we get to regional finals and super regionals, then I think we could see lots of upsets. I think there are a lot of good teams in the nation this year, but there's a big drop off from, say, the top 20 teams to the teams after that. But once you get to the top 20 teams, I legitimately think any of those teams could win in any given series or, in any given couple of days. So it'll be interesting. I'm excited, especially to see which teams kind of show up because last year we had a lot of upsets early. A lot of teams that were hosting go down.
Yeah, I concur. I think one of the biggest things that I'm looking at is the 1 seeds. Like, which ones would you say are the weakest 1 seeds? I put out a list the other day of maybe the 5 or 6 most vulnerable 1 seeds that are hosting that could be on upset alert.
Yeah. I mean, I think ECU is the go-to one, right? Like if they were at full health, if they were, playing, if they were in the middle of the season, then I think that they would be like solid favorites. They could legitimately take on Wake Forest in that region. But Treya Savage, he was in the hospital during the AAC tournament. He didn't pitch at all. Yeah, he's going to be back. Cliff Godwin said he's going to be back and he's going to pitch this weekend, but who knows how deep he can go, how effective he'll even be. And then the other ECU ace, Zach Root, he pitched in the AAC tournament, but he only went like 3 or 4 innings. He didn't get very deep in that game. And once he hit the 3 or 4 inning mark, that's when he started to get hit around a little bit. So ECU, they're a very good baseball team when they have their 2 aces at the top and they can, pitch their bullpen off them. And they've got a solid lineup, but you're literally losing your top 2 pitchers. Like any team would struggle if that happens. So there are just a lot of question marks around them.
I think for East Carolina, they have a relatively solid offense. They have a couple guys that are, I'm a big fan of, like Jacob Jenkins-Cower, Jacob Starling, Carter Cunningham, losing Alec Makarevich, who transferred to NC State, who's been just a huge addition for the Wolfpack. Kind of hurt ECU a little bit because they've never really been known as an offensively high-powered team. They've been an offense that can do enough to support the pitching that they've had, and they do have one of the best starters in college baseball. Trey Savage, a guy I think is very capable of going top 10 in this draft this summer, if not top 15. And the fact is here for East Carolina, who had to draw Wake Forest in their region, the problem is Zach Root has only thrown 4 games since the start of April. He's been dealing with some injuries. Maybe he comes out a little bit rusty against an Evansville team. We'll get into that game a little bit more. Now, Savage was in the hospital last week, like you say, chest problem, something with his lungs, supposedly, Cliff Godwin was saying. And you don't know how he's going to be coming back off the mound. You don't know what kind of endurance he's going to have after, something that's going to affect your physical health outside of baseball, potentially. And probably he's okay, and that's what we hope. But that's definitely an issue. I would say my weakest is UC Santa Barbara. I think the Gauchos ran through the Big West, which, if we're being honest, that's not really that good of a conference. UC Santa Barbara didn't really beat anybody. They lost to UC Irvine when they were number 16 this year. They lost to Cal Poly. It's a team that was 25-0 at home, which is huge, and that matters during the regular season. The only notable win really was a sweep against Oregon, which just so happens Oregon's in their region, and they beat UConn via the sweep. But I think with Oregon and San Diego, the Toreros, who, they're a sneaky team who's been in the tournament the last few years. I think that's a region where they can definitely get upset because, anything we know about West Coast baseball is it's a crapshoot.
Yeah, exactly. Right. It seems like the Pac-12, it seems like every time there's been a team to kind of take over, you see like a team standing out, that all of a sudden that team's either lost a big series that they shouldn't lose, or a series at home. Arizona's been, they've been dominant for, the past couple months, but they didn't start off very strong. And then Oregon State, they started off really strong and they kind of slowed down a little bit late. But once again, they're more of, a better team at home. But no, I agree. I think there's a lot of different opportunities for teams all the way in those West Coast regions. Like looking at it like a UC Irvine as well. San Diego is a 2 seed, in Oregon. Like I think all of those teams have legitimate chances to move on.
And in terms of the 4 seeds, everybody after last year is looking for that next Oral Roberts. What's that team that's 500-1 coming into the tournament that nobody knows about, that can possibly make that run if there is that team, that 4 seed that gets in the right region and just plays great baseball and is capable of, getting to Omaha and possibly making an opportunity for them to give the people what they want. They want a 4 seed in there. Do you have any teams that come to mind? I think you're on mute, John.
I guess something must have happened there, but no, nothing. No teams really. There's a reason why, these teams are these 4 seeds that make runs like that are Cinderellas. Also, Oral Roberts was in a very winnable regional last year. The only team that I think could possibly do it is Stetson out of the Florida State regional. And I do think Florida State will win that regional, but the reason I say that is just because of the familiarity in that first round matchup, right, against Florida State, who, they split the regular season with, and then Stetson's, seen a lot of those hitters already. So they've got all their pitching in game 1 as well. Florida State isn't going on Jamie Arnold in game 1. So I think that's a legitimate game where Stetson could find an upset. So I'm staying away from that one. But like I said, I do think Florida State wins, but I think Stetson's has a legitimate chance there.
Yeah, that's actually the game we're going to be touching on next. But the 4 seed that I've looked into and based on the path that they have, and shout out to Ben Upton. I'm not sure if he's making it tonight. You've scheduled to, but He was doing some deep dive, and we talked about this on a podcast we were on together on Tuesday, yesterday with Nick Hathcote. Shout out to Nick. And what he pointed out was Bryant's got a lot of veteran arms. They have like 6 or 7 veteran arms that can go out there and just piece together a game that they can make life difficult for an offense, especially one that's potent. And I'm not saying that they are the Notre Dame of 2022, but if you look at that formula, Notre Dame wasn't really a great team. They were just hot, but they matched up well against Tennessee. Tennessee, the 2022 Volunteers were probably one of the best teams ever assembled in the sport of college baseball. They didn't even make Omaha. They lost in their own super region at home to Notre Dame. Why? Because Notre Dame's veteran, savvy pitching staff was able to neutralize an extremely dangerous offense in a hitter's park. Now, I think Bryant could possibly fit that bill this week in that NC State regional. Because if somehow the 800-1 Bryant to win it all team advance out of this region, then they would have to go play the winner of the Georgia region in Athens, which is most likely going to be the Bulldogs. And what do you know? Georgia can't really pitch that well, so maybe you steal a few runs there. And if Bryant's pitching can neutralize the Georgia offense that's been probably the second best in the country this year, then you never know. It's obviously a very long shot, but just trying to get inside the idea of maybe if a 4 seed could do it, who would be the one? And side note, my best friend actually played baseball at Bryant a decade ago, so I went up there on a few occasions to check out some games when I visited him, and it was Bryant has a good little team, man. They get a good little mix of the Northeast guys, and they have some talent, so that'll be interesting to see. But John, you just touched on it with Stetson and Florida State in this first game. Obviously, Stetson's plus 280, FSU's minus 395. We're not laying FSU. We're not telling people to throw them in a parlay. But is there a way you would attack this matchup? Carson Dorsey was confirmed for Florida State, which I personally am very concerned about. And personally, because of that concern, I think at the bare minimum, I'd probably be looking at a Stetson run line. And with FSU laying near $4, I think we might be able to get a plus 4.5 on Stetson. Is that something you'd be interested in, to quote the great Bob Ryan on Entourage?
Yeah, this is one of those games where this first day right there are so many massive favorites that you kind of have to go to a parlay for a lot of the plays that you want to make, right? But this is a game where I specifically have stayed away from. I don't know if I have can make myself bet Stetson straight up, but I definitely like the run line. And like you said, Carson Dorsey pitching for Florida State, he's not their ace. We know how much trouble Florida State's bullpen has had all season long. If their bats go quiet at the wrong time, then they could be in trouble. And there's just so much familiarity between these teams. They've already played multiple times that this is not an ideal, matchup, an ideal 4 seed if you're Florida State. So, if anything, I'd probably look at Stetson or Stetson on the run line.
Yeah, we're waiting for those to come out. We have not received, at least to my knowledge, any run lines or totals. And I think if Stetson, if you're getting them at 4.5, maybe even it's probably at least 3.5. I probably would still take a shot on them. And I'd probably say I might play an over, anything over 13.5. The fact is Carson Dorsey, the guy who's going for FSU, has allowed 8 earned runs and 11 hits and 6 walks over his last 2 appearances that lasted just 1+ innings. So if we're seeing an opportunity here where Carson Dorsey has another stinker, goes out, gives up 5 runs over 3 innings, then we have a pretty good confidence that the Seminoles are going to be able to score here in this game. And honestly, Florida State wants to make the run. Their offense is going to have to probably shoulder a lot of the burden when anybody not named Jamie Arnold is on the mound. And since we're not going to have Cam Leiter this weekend, head coach Link Jarrett confirmed that, which is a real buzzkill. I'm holding big Florida State money. They're one of my biggest positions this year. I do think FSU is is a sneaky 1 seed that I am a little bit concerned about.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like I said, that bullpen has been very worrisome for a very long time this year. And I don't remember which team won. These teams played twice during the regular season. They split. One of the games was 1-0. I don't remember which team won the 1-0 game, but it doesn't matter. For the point that I'm trying to make is that when you have the bats go quiet on either side, anyone can win those, close games, right? It's just one pitch that can make the difference, that gets hit out. Just a bloop and a bomb. And that's literally the difference in these low scoring games, these games that are where the teams know each other so well. So that's definitely a worry for Florida State.
And now moving over here to the Chapel Hill region, LSU is a big favorite in this 2-3 matchup with Wofford. Wofford is a nice little mid-major program. They're not one of the elites, but they're one of those like Oral Roberts types where they put together a pretty solid roster and they're able to compete in their conference. The thing is, I'd imagine it's either Gage Jump or Luke Holman. I think for LSU, especially with the week that they had where they had to play 5 games this past week in the SEC tournament, I haven't seen anything in terms of confirmation, but I would imagine they probably go normal rotation, Gage Jump game 1 against Wofford. He's been unreal, and try to save Luke Holman for a game 2 against UNC. Is there any shot you would take a run line with Wofford, or is this just a complete stay away all around?
No, I actually like LSU in a money line parlay there on the other side. LSU they're a top 10 team in the nation when they have either Jump or Holman starting, right? It's just their pitching depth. And when they get towards that 3rd game, 4th game of the weekend, when they're really in trouble. But these first couple of games, when they have Jump and when they have Holman starting, they're one of the best teams in the nation. And we know their bats are hot right now. So Wofford was hitting a lot in their conference tournament. I ended up watching a few of their games. They can hit, but facing that SEC top level pitching is going to be a lot different.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, LSU, it depends what kind of legs that you're looking at there, but I think 270 is kind of pushing the very edge, the brim of what you would throw in a money line parlay. And to be honest, I don't care how much you like something. I personally am not a big fan of putting like minus 350, minus 400 legs. I think maybe 325 is like the absolute max that I would go, just because you're not gaining that much value in a ticket. It's not putting up your ticket odds that much more, and it's more risk than reward at that point. So I do think LSU is right there on that borderline. I think it's still good for the money line parlay should you choose to throw them in there. I think they are definitely the team to beat in this region. So I'm going to be able to go with LSU here and join you. Okay, let's go to the Charlottesville region where we got UPenn, who's a big plus 500 dog against Virginia. The Cavaliers in their own region have elected to go with Joe Savino, who has kind of just returned over the last few weeks. He looked pretty good early on against Florida State, and then things kind of started unraveling. He's got some pretty good pitches. He's got that really good changeup. And, again, this is one where we're not laying Virginia in a money line parlay, but do you think there's any kind of shot you'd lay or grab maybe like a plus 5.5 or 6.5, say, with UPenn, a team who's been historically dangerous when they get to these situations as the 4 seed in a tournament?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you want to make a play on this game, it's probably got to be Penn on like a run line to look at. I'm not a big fan of Virginia, to be honest. I don't think they have the pitching depth, the starting pitching depth, or the bullpen to make it deep. And, this kind of tournament, I think that really the only thing they have going for them in this is that they're at home. And that's massive for them because they're a much different team at home. They play great. But we saw Penn last year, kind of make a run. I believe it was Southern Miss. I want to say that they made it to the regional finals and lost 2 games in a row. But we're leading that region at the time and played a couple close games to Southern Miss. I want to say at Southern Miss last year. So we know that they're a veteran team and, they can win some games, that they have the experience being in this spot. That being said, I don't know if they would be the same team this year. I think if anything, you had got to go with Penn State run line.
I think the run line, if you're getting 5.5, that's a lot of runs for, Virginia is a top 10 offense in the country. They could score. And, the crazy part is their offense is not even as good as it was last year when they had Jake Geloff and Kyle Teal as the dangerous guys. And really for UPenn, one guy is the big contributor. It's Wyatt Hensler. He's got 22 tanks on the year, batting 372 with a 1259 OPS. They're somewhat of a decent steals team, 58 out of 71 tries. I don't know if UPenn's got enough offense in order to sustain unless they get a couple timely hits and 1 or 2 home runs. But the bigger issue is they don't really have that much quality starting pitching. Their best guy, Cole Zaviro, is just under a 5 ERA. Then Ryan Dombrowski with a 7.36. It's a team 640 ERA. So I don't really know if UPenn has the amount of pitching to get this done. Now, what I will say is a lot of times you get these teams that on paper don't seem like they should contend. They should compete. But everybody is here for a reason. Everybody made this tournament because that at least they're somewhat good. And the pressure gets to these 1 seeds. There's no pressure on UPenn. UPenn's a 4 seed in a tough region. They're not regarded as a team that has any chance to win the NCAA tournament. And you get a team like Virginia that, really can't pitch that well consistently. And, they're the home team. It's their region. So sometimes you get a little pressure on those teams that they don't always are able to respond.
Yeah, 100%. It's kind of going back to what I was saying at the beginning of the show. Like these 1 seeds that come in, they're at home, but even these first games, everybody's nervous. This is it. A lot of these teams, a lot of these players, they're not even just playing, for the playoffs, but they're playing some of their last games of their lives. That's pressure stuff. That's some scary stuff. All you want to do is perform. All you want to do is just keep playing, keep winning so you can keep playing. So there's definitely a lot of pressure on these teams, especially at home when you can, you go 3 up, 3 down and you can feel a crowd kind of have no energy, or you can see the other team make a play and your crowd just goes silent. You feed off that.
Yeah, 100%. I'm probably off this game. I need to see the pitching matchup, at least in terms of the UPenn side. But, maybe if you get a 6.5, a 5.5 even, I might look at dabbling in it later. So far, I have a small card. I think only have 5 plays. I'm not really going to blow it out tomorrow with, in my opinion, the better games on Saturday when you're probably going to get a lot of 1s versus 2s or 1s versus 3s. Speaking of Oral Roberts, they're plus 270 at Oklahoma, the 4 seed against the number 1 Sooners in the Norman region. Oral Roberts was that little magical bug in the lightning bottle that made the run to Omaha. They were very close to making it to the Final Four. They came up just short. But that team is a lot different than this team. That team was special, what Oral Roberts had. They had legitimate 3 good pitchers and a great closer. They had a well-deepened lineup led by Jonah Cox, who was riding a 47-game hitting streak. Really, the only guy that's returned that's of note this year, at least from the pitching side, is Jacob Hall, who I believe is confirmed to go against Kyson Witherspoon of Oklahoma. Do you give Oral Roberts any kind of shot here?
Like you said, this isn't the same team as last year. I think maybe a slight chance just because of their name. But like you said, this is not the same team as last year. Last year, they had tons of pitching depth. They had legitimate guys, that you could rely on. Whereas this year, even to begin the season, they had an awful start to the season. They weren't beating anybody. Even the bad teams that they were playing, they were getting blown out by some of them. So that team is completely different than this team. I also think Oklahoma is, a lot, they're more sharpened this year. We know they made the run a couple years ago and had more of an off year last year, but they still have a couple guys from that team a couple years ago. And they really have some pitching depth is the big thing for Oklahoma. They have a couple guys they can rely on in the middle of their lineup. They have some good pitchers. So people are going to look at Oral Roberts and say, oh, they have the experience from last year, but I just don't think this is the same type of team whatsoever. Whereas last year they were kind of built to make it in this type of format. And this year they're not, where Oklahoma is.
Yeah, I'm not going to have anything on this game just because I don't really see a value on either side. Maybe Jacob Hall, if it's a 3.5 run line, possibly. Hall is a very solid pitcher. He was good last year, but Oklahoma in their own building with Witherspoon on the mound, who's been very good. I don't think Oklahoma, based on what Oral Roberts did last year, is going to overlook what the Golden Eagles did, and I think they're gonna take it to them. So I'm actually off this game. It's not really that appealing to me in terms of a betting perspective. And I guess the next game is kind of in that same realm. We got Army West Point against Georgia. Georgia's a monster favorite, and Georgia's still a relatively reasonable price to win their region. And considering this. The only thing that I think could even be considered is a total. I don't know how much scoring we're going to get from Army West Point, and Georgia, they could score 15 runs on their own. So it really depends maybe what a total is. I think this one's probably just a complete pass for me, though.
Yeah, I mean, Georgia is, to be honest, I'm not too high on Georgia. I don't think that they should have been a national seed, but they are, and they got one of the easiest draws in the nation, which is wild. But that means, like where they get in trouble is their pitching depth, and that's not really going to be tested in this game, and maybe not the next game either, but it'll be tested down the road. But definitely not in this game. I think Georgia's offense will just be way too powerful, especially at home in this. But I think this is also a good example of a team that, has some expectations, is at home, but has some flaws and could feel that pressure early. The only problem is I don't know if Army is a good enough team to be able to take advantage of that. But I do think we could see some I guess, jitters or a slow Georgia team, early in this tournament.
Of course, nobody got more favors than the Georgia Bulldogs, like 17-13 in the conference. They lose to Florida the last week. They lose to LSU in the first game in the single elimination round of the SEC tournament. Meanwhile, they're a 7 seed somehow. And Mississippi State, a team who won 2 more games in the SEC, who won the head-to-head matchup, is not only not hosting, not only are they not a national seed, they're not hosting, and they're in a 2 seed in a Charlottesville regional that if they win, their prize is to go to Fayetteville and play Arkansas. So, not really very fair. And considering, Mississippi State is my biggest position, I'm a little annoyed, and I'm very upset about that fact. But it's done. Can't do anything about it now, except Mississippi State's gonna be pissed off. I'm so ready. Mississippi State, do Daddy proud. Do me proud. All right, next game, we got Duke hosting UConn. UConn is one of the better, I'd say, mid-major programs in terms of they've been here before, John, in the last few years. This is a UConn team that almost took out Stanford in I believe, the Super Regional. They had a really good chance a couple years ago to beat Stanford in their own super region to make Omaha. They had an opportunity to put up a 5 or 6 spot in the first or second inning, and they only got 2 runs, left the bases loaded, and, rest is history. They end up getting eliminated. And I think what was a winner-take-all game. I have to go back to the archives. But anyway, they're plus 210 against Duke. I got to be honest, man. I think this is a Duke money line parlay spot. I have a lot of expectations for the Blue Devils. And, I don't think they're going to be throwing Santucci. I think it's probably going to be most likely Higgins or Kyle Johnson or maybe James Talon. Who knows? But it doesn't really matter, in my opinion. The best guy for UConn has barely a sub-4 ERA. That's good pitching for the Big East and the teams that they play. For the Duke Blue Devils, who I have to win the region and face Florida State in the next round, I think Duke's going to end up steamrolling them on their way to probably a 3-0 regional victory out of the Norman region.
Yeah, and I mean, you said it right. Like Duke has so many different options that they can go to for this first game, and they're built to win this type of tournament, right? You know, to have all these pitching options, all this pitching depth. They can go to really whoever they want, and they'll still have plenty of depth to get through game 2, game 3, even a game 4. Like Duke is one of the rare teams that I think could actually lose game 1 and have enough pitching to get them to the finals and win the finals and get out of the regional still. That I don't think they're going to lose game 1, but if they do, like they have enough pitching to get them through. And UConn had a gauntlet of a schedule to start this season. Terrible decision by them because it wasn't just the teams that they played, but they went, I believe it was like to Florida, to the West Coast, back to Florida, and then back to the West Coast in like 4 consecutive weekends for non-conference scheduling. And one of those West Coast weekends was like a 5-game week as well. So it's understandable why they got off to such a slow start. They really didn't play at home, and they were constantly not just traveling, but all the way across the country back and forth. So they have been playing better recently, but that's been against the Big East, right? And we know the Big East isn't as strong. UConn's one of those teams that is usually going to make it through their conference tournament. And like you said, they've been here in the past, but I don't think this is one of the best UConn teams that we've seen. We saw, like you said, a good UConn team 2 years ago. I believe it was like Maryland. They beat in that like 10-9, 11-10 game where they called the base runner out in one of the last innings for running out of the baseline when he just ran straight. I want to say that was that when they played Stanford after that.
Was it UConn or was it Maryland, Michigan?
I think it was UConn. I want to say it was UConn and Maryland in that game, but
maybe.
It's like you said, like I just don't think that this is one of UConn's better teams, and
No.
like, yeah, they made it here, but I don't even think they were one of the best teams in the Big East. Like there were a couple other good teams too. They just ended up winning the tournament. And Duke, obviously, they won the ACC tournament. They're on a roll right now, and their lineup's hot.
Yeah, I think, unfortunately, Duke is a team that I have some shekels on, not as much as Florida State. The real crime is only one of those two teams potentially would get to go to Omaha, not both. That's something I'm a little upset about. I didn't want those two teams to match up, but I mean, if they do, it's still going to be a great super regional. This is one of the more intriguing games, in my opinion. We mentioned this at the top of the show in terms of most vulnerable number 1 seeds, and you said East Carolina. Zach Root and the Pirates are getting the Evansville Purple Aces. John, I'm going to say it. I think Evansville has a very good chance to, if not win this game, definitely cover the run line.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're a good look. ECU, I feel like ECU could come out one of 2 ways, and it's not going to be anywhere in the middle. They're going to come out hot. Everyone's doubting them after getting a host. They've got one of their aces back. They were bounced out of the AAC tournament early. They want to show that they're back at home and, show to the jungle that they're ready to play. Or we could see an ECU team come out and, Zach Root's not his sharpest. They give up a couple runs early. Suddenly, maybe you have to go to the bullpen a little bit earlier than you want to. And ECU doesn't have as much bullpen depth as they have in the past. And that's when you kind of start to see the nerves, creep in. And I think we could see an ECU team, sort of struggle in that situation, because even in the AAC tournament, that first game of the tournament, they played, I want to say it was Rice, and they were down, I think it was 4-0 in the 8th inning, and ended up having like a 12-run inning and coming back big. But at the same time, you can't do that against the better competition, these better teams that make the tournament. You can do it against maybe a Rice that's under 5. I believe they're under 500 and hasn't been good all season. You can have one of those innings out of nowhere, but I don't know if you can have that against an Evansville team that's going to be ready to play.
I actually put out, I think today or yesterday, Evansville plus 220 at a quarter unit. I think, honestly, man, Evansville is a team that I watched play a little bit. I watched them play that series early in the year against Mississippi State. Mississippi State is a SEC, program. And, for the most part, they pretty much dragged them. But Carolina is not Mississippi State. East Carolina is very top heavy. They have like 4 or 5 really good players, and then the rest are just meh. And they're not a Power 5 program. In terms of mid-majors, I'd probably say it's East Carolina and Dallas Baptist consistently every year, along with Coastal Carolina. I think this is potentially upset territory. I mean, East Carolina's minus 315. They should win. They should. They're at home. They got literally hand-wrapped a hosting spot because their AD is on the committee. Somebody gift-wrapped it and handed them a host spot. And we know Cliff Godwin's talking about, oh, we think our guys earned it. Yeah, okay. Yeah, Duke in the ACC, who had a sick year, won their tournament. But here you go. Yeah, you guys get the hosting spot over Duke or Mississippi State. I mean, hell, we could even put Indiana State in that conversation. But, yeah, no, East Carolina, you deserved it. And listen, I like watching East Carolina baseball. I love Trey Savage. He was one of my guys. But considering a potent-ish offense for Evansville and a guy in Kenton, I got to rehash his name. I apologize. If you got it, let me know. It's Jesus Christ. What's this kid's name? Kenton Deverman. Kenton Deverman, I was looking him up. This kid's got 5 quality starts in his last 6 outings. Evansville's offense isn't great against lefties, but they're not bad. East Carolina's offense is solid, is good against lefties, but they're not as good as they are against righties. If Deverman can eat up 6 or 7 innings and he keeps them in this ball game, I think there's a chance for Evansville to steal this one. I think plus 230 is a really good price behind a pitcher who eats up innings, who has been very good lately, and an offense that can score. So I think the money line's in play. I definitely think a run line that's probably going to be pushing 3.5, definitely at least 2.5, and even maybe an over. Maybe an over that's anything, smaller than 12.5. I think all those are in play. I think Evansville has a real case because what I'm thinking is East Carolina is not focused on this game. It's just my thinking. They're focused on Trey Savage, Chase Burns in game 2 for the winner to go to 2-0 and take a stranglehold on this region. That's what I'm thinking. And Evansville is a very tough, pesky 4 seed. This, in my opinion, is probably the best or second best opportunity this weekend for a 4 seed to take down a 1.
Yeah, I think that's a good look as well. It's definitely one of the better options if you want to bet a 4 seed.
Yeah, and East Carolina's ballpark is a bandbox. They have 2 foot fences. My 2-year-old toddler could crawl over that. I don't have a kid, but I'm just saying in theory. Like I'm saying, if I did, he could probably crawl over that. We do have a comment here. Andrew Zambrano, 2 of the best. Thank you for all you do, guys. Good luck this weekend. Thank you so much, Andrew. Best of luck to you. Thank you for tuning into the program. We really appreciate it. Moving on from East Carolina to one of the biggest money line favorites I think I've ever seen in the sport. Texas A&M Aggies at home against Grambling. A&M, I think, has confirmed they are throwing Tanner Jones, for half the season, the Saturday guy, the guy who's, I would say, has been the weak link in this pitching rotation. The guy who was pulled out of the weekend rotation for probably the last quarter plus of the regular season. I just don't think there's any way to attack this because the run line here is legit, probably like 8.5.
Yeah, I'm with you. And at that point, you kind of just got to look at an over, right? If you think that Grambling's going to be able to score a couple runs, if anything, you play the over. If it is like an 8.5, if it's like a 12.5 run line, you just do the math, right? You see how many runs you think Grambling will actually score. And then if you think A&M will, be higher than that versus the run line versus the total, that's what you do. But yeah, I mean, there's really not much you can do here, to be honest. You parlay at Texas A&M on a money line, and it gets you like 2 cents of value. And then there's no way I'm going to trust Grambling, enough to do anything in this game. So,
people, please don't put Texas A&M in a money line parlay. Please, John said it'll add 2 cents to your value. At that point, why would you do that? And for being honest, you know why they're throwing Tanner Jones? because he's the weakest link of their starting pitching staff. He's the guy that they trust least in the big spot. I mean, I don't think A&M's going to lose this game, but I think the over would probably be the only way to go, because I'd probably expect A&M at home in front of their home crowd to probably put up at least 10 to 12 runs. In that case, I think I'd be surprised to see a total anything under 15.5. And we don't even know. They might not even hang a total for this game. You just don't know. So I think this is a tough game. I'm probably not even going to watch this game, to be honest. Maybe tune in for a Jason Lavalette at bat, see if my boy can push Charlie Condon's case for the Golden Spikes. But no go for me. Intriguing 2-3. It's not one of my favorites, but still pretty solid. Indiana Hoosiers plus 124 against Southern Miss minus 160. Listen, Indiana early in the year was a team that I thought might really have a good case to win the Big Ten. They were my preseason pick at 7-1 to win the Big Ten. They started out hot, then they kind of fizzled, and they didn't really regain that composure that we saw earlier in the year. The starting pitching from like Braden Reisdorf and Connor Foley was looking really good. But now they're electing to throw Ty Bothwell against Billy Oldham. Would you lay it with Southern Miss or take the plus money with Indiana?
Yeah, I'm playing Ole Miss. I'm playing Southern Miss here. They're a team where they've got the top pitching staff. Billy Oldham and Nico Mazza, very good top end of the pitching staff. Then you've got a couple good relievers, and then it really falls off for Southern Miss. But they are one of the top teams when they have one of their aces going. And Oldham absolutely dominated in the AAC tournament as well. His second outing, he came in and he was on short rest and came in as a relief option. I think he only got like one out, gave up like 4 runs, something like that. But it's very understandable why that happens. At that time, Indiana, I mean, they're more of a veteran team. But like you said, I thought they were going to throw Foley here. They're not, and their bullpen and pitching staff just isn't that deep in general. So Southern Miss, they do have the bats that they're not going to, score you 10 runs every game, but when they go off, they can go off. So I do like Southern Miss on the money line in this game.
So I think maybe why Indiana elected to go, because I didn't look that deep into this game because I didn't really have any interest in taking it, just because I feel like, both teams are solid. They're capable of winning this game. I didn't really see a true edge, but our guy Tyler Pemberton comes out with Southern Miss can't hit lefties. And Ty, I got to ask you, what's up with abbreviating everything? Reading tweets from you is like trying to read a Cam Newton text message. So he thinks Southern Miss, who can't hit lefties, could be a little bit vulnerable here for Indiana. And, I think maybe that's why Indiana elects to go with the grad student lefty in this matchup. Maybe, Indiana is getting a little bit strategic here and throwing a guy in Bothwell who has just under a 5 ERA. He's looked okay in spurts. He's had a couple really bad blow-up outings. Penn State, he let up 8 earned runs. Rutgers, he let up 6 earned runs, a couple 5 earned run outings. So maybe that's what it is, man. Maybe the lefty thing, which some teams don't hit lefties well. The Tennessee Volunteers are a prime example. They do not hit lefties well. LSU last year wasn't great against lefty pitchers, at least solid lefty starters. So possibly, that could be the option here. But for me, I think I'm staying away. Just because I don't really love this game enough to try and force something. And I think with that being said, that's an important note for everybody. You walk in, you're like a kid at the candy store. You see everything. You want everything. Same thing kind of goes here. Don't feel obligated to bet everything. Be strategic and patient and review the board and see what you like the best. Maybe pick out 5-6 plays tops that you like instead of trying to fire on every little thing. And, that's what I'm doing here. I have a small card for tomorrow, like I said, saving some bullets. And this game doesn't really just tickle my fancy enough. And Tyler says, LOL, I don't know, man. Wife says the same thing. I don't know. Ty, I think you got to listen to your wife on this one, bro. I think you got to start typing out in full sentences. All right. Actually, one of the very interesting games here is James Madison plus 175 against South Carolina. I do believe Eli Jones is confirmed for this game. And James Madison was a team that gave Arkansas in the first weekend a run for their money. They beat up Hagen Smith, 1 inning, 3 runs, give up a big-time home run. South Carolina played deep last week, and I've heard a couple people talk about teams that were hot. They're playing long into the SEC tournament or any conference tournament. For the most part, could be potential letdowns. Do you see the Gamecocks being a letdown here, especially without Gavin Casas, who broke his hand the other day?
I don't think so. James Madison is definitely a live dog. They're a very good team and playing in the Sun Belt. Sun Belt's one of the best conferences in the nation. You know, people who don't follow college baseball might think just Power 5 or the best 5 conferences, but the Sun Belt is one of the best conferences in the nation. You know, you could say they're probably around 4th, maybe 3rd. But South Carolina, they did make that run in the SEC tournament. And the main thing is, if they had a third baseman that could play semi-decent defense, that could play beer league defense, then they would have been in the SEC final. You know, they would have beat LSU, and you know, we wouldn't be talking about LSU as much. South Carolina's also got a very veteran team, is the thing. Like, they have a lot of guys that have been there before. They don't really have an ace or, you know, a guy or two that they can just, you know, your Chase Burns, your Hagen Smith, but they've got a lot of options in that pitching staff. So they do have depth to make it through a tournament, as we saw against LSU. Like, yeah, we did see their back end of their pitching staff and their bullpen kind of start to give up runs late, but it's a very good LSU team on the other side hitting. And like I said, you can't give up multiple outs to, you know, these teams. A lot of people, if you weren't watching the South Carolina LSU game, the most recent game, their third baseman, and this wasn't counted on the score sheet, literally made 5 separate errors. And to the point where I believe the first one made 3 errors. They pulled him mid-game, which you rarely ever see for, you know, performance-wise. But it was true. You know, one of the innings, there were 4 or 5 unearned runs after he could have made the 3rd out. Pulled him, put in a new guy. He comes in, and in the 9th inning, he gets back-to-back plays. He makes 2 straight errors, and the LSU gets the 2 tying runs on base. So, you know, you've got to imagine they're going to shore that up. And I think South Carolina is a very good team, and they'll be able to win this game. But, you know, James Madison is a good team, so I wouldn't be terribly surprised if they win. But I would lean South Carolina.
I think JMU, like you said, is a live dog. They have some guys in their lineup that are very dangerous. They have 5 guys in double figures with home run. They have 100 stolen bases as a team. They bat 300. So I definitely think they could score. South Carolina is probably likely to score. So I think some runs can be done here. Ultimately, I'm going to stay off just because I don't love anything enough. But you know what? Let's keep it going, baby. We got SEMO against Arkansas. I don't see anything here. Mason Wayne is confirmed for Arkansas. We can pass this game. This is one of my favorite games on the board. Florida minus 140 against Nebraska, who's now plus 110 on DraftKings. Brett Sears for Nebraska, probably one of the top 10 starters this season, against Liam Peterson, a freshman who struggled this year but has been better of late. John, I'm going Nebraska. I like Nebraska when the line came out. Brett Sears he's been that good. I know Florida is like that, could be that Ole Miss, like barely gets in, talented team, you know, maybe makes that run. Who knows? But ultimately, I got to go with the better pitcher here. The team that's been a little bit more consistent is Nebraska, and you're getting them as a dog. And the only reason that's the case is because you pay the SEC tax. You're always going to pay the SEC tax, especially when they play some other Power 5 or other conference.
Yeah, and like you said, I mean, Nebraska, Brett Sears is going. He's been one of the best pitchers in the nation this year. But, you know, there is that worry with Florida is, you know, they were probably, I mean, well, according to the committee, they weren't one of the last teams in, but they're 28-27 this year, should have been one of the last teams in. And usually those teams, you know, they have nothing to lose. They play free, and, you know, they can go out and definitely win a game or two. And then obviously you have a lot of guys in the Florida team that have the experience from last year as well and making it all the way to the College World Series finals. So I would lean Nebraska here. I'm thinking about taking Nebraska, especially against Liam Peterson, because you have no idea what you're going to get out of him. But, that Florida lineup, and then, I mean, even the Nebraska lineup definitely worries me because I do think Florida has the advantage there. But I think it'll end up being like a Peterson-Neely game for Florida, which, it's, you really don't know. Even Neely, like, he's been very hit or miss this season too. So I would probably lean Nebraska at plus money, but Florida is obviously, they're going to be the favorite for a reason.
All right, we're gonna pick it up here because I forgot I actually got a podcast with my guy Greg Peterson on a guest spot for a few minutes in about 20. So we got to get going here. So Oregon -115, San Diego -115, 2-3 in the UC Santa Barbara region. I think the winner of this game is going to end up winning the region. I think Oregon was the better play at +350. I threw a half unit on that. That was a pre-region future for me. I don't know who Oregon's throwing. Maybe you have that, but I don't care whether it's R.J. Gordon or Grayson Grinzel. Even against a tough San Diego Toreros team, I think Oregon gets this done.
That's the thing is Oregon, like they don't really have an ace or a guy or two that they're really, going to go to. They just have a lot of decent options. And I would probably lean San Diego. This might be the one game where we're on the opposite side here, but Oregon is a very scary team because they can hit and they have the experience. San Diego's got some experience too, and they've been a very good team this year. But like you said, this first game is massive. Like if it were a different style format, maybe if it were like, a group stage in a sense where every team played every team to start, maybe this would go differently. But this first game, I mean, these two teams are going to go to war. And I think that could end up benefiting UCSB later in the region. But these are two very good teams, and it's a pick 'em for a reason.
Yep. And let's go to that Tucson region where West Virginia is facing Dallas Baptist. We haven't confirmed the DBU starter yet. I believe Derek Clark goes for West Virginia. He's probably been one of their two best arms this year. Dallas Baptist, the biggest question, who I actually gave out a couple days ago at -150. I don't really care who they throw, whether it's Teron DeBerry or Ryan Johnson. I think Ryan Johnson, it's a slam dunk. You take DBU. DBU is one of my best long shots. I have a nice ticket on them at 90-1. I think Dallas Baptist wins this either way. But if you're the Patriots, as tempting as it is to try and get this done with Teron DeBerry, I think you can't screw around. You got to get this game won and use Ryan Johnson as much as temptation tells you to go save him for potential game 2 against Arizona.
Yeah, I think so too. I like Dallas Baptist here. West Virginia is a solid team. They've obviously had JJ Weatherholt in that lineup, and they've got a couple other guys that can hit. But if they face some really good pitching, they can definitely go quiet. And then West Virginia also, like, they've got two good starters, but then it really falls off in terms of like the entire rest of the pitching staff, both bullpen and the rest of the starting staff after those first two guys. So if you get to either one of them or get to the bullpen early, then you're going to have success against them. DBU has got great pitching staff. They've got a lot of experience. So I like DBU in that one.
Perfect. Okay. We're going to skip Nicholls State, UC Irvine. We're going to skip VCU, Wake Forest. Do you have a play in UCF, Alabama?
No play, just leans.
We'll skip that one. Texas, Louisiana is probably the second or third best 2-3. Like I said, I think there's 5. Texas with Max Grubbs is a small -130 favorite versus Louisiana, who's throwing Carson Fluno. I think this is a very great matchup in this College Station Regional. I don't have a play here. I think this is one I need a little bit more studying on.
Yeah, I like ULL at plus money here. They've got experience being in this position before. Texas, they always make it to the regionals, but we saw them last year. Even in the Big 12 tournament, I almost said SEC. They're very close to being in the SEC, but not yet. But Big 12 tournament, they went 2 and done each of the last 2 years. It seems like they have a lot of pressure on them whenever they play in these tournaments, and it really shows. But Texas doesn't have the pitching stat or the lineup that they've had in the past. They've been more of a pitching team this year, But even as a pitching team, they've got a couple guys at the top of the rotation, and then it really falls off. Whereas ULL's got a great pitching staff, and they can hit a little bit. So I do like. I think if these teams were switched with the the names, if that makes sense. If Texas had the same team as ULL had the team of Texas. Like if these had the name brands that they were, then the line would be switched. So I like ULL plus money.
I think it's a good play. Kyle DeBarge, potential first rounder, shortstop for the Raging Cajuns. It's going to be a good matchup, and I do think the winner of this game, getting Texas A&M with Ryan Prager on the mound, is going to be must-see TV. Ultimately, I would think A&M wins that, but definitely could think the winner is going to give A&M a show in the next one. St. John's, Mississippi State, I think we're going to skip. That's a big line. I ultimately think Mississippi State's going to win that. Northern Kentucky, Tennessee, we're going to skip. That's pointless. Bryant, the only reason I'm bringing this up, Bryant plus 550 versus NC State. We talked about how Bryant's pitching is so deep. I don't really know if it matters who they throw. They have at least 3 capable arms. And NC State confirmed Sam Highfill. Sam Highfill's been really bad as of late. He's given up like 7 earned runs or something like that in his last 2 starts. He has not looked good. He's fading at the wrong time. And if Bryant's veteran pitching can come in and neutralize a potent NC State offense, I think this is a capable Bryant team that can upset in this game. I don't think they will, but I think ultimately I'd probably be going with a Bryant run line. I could see them if they're something along the lines of like a 5.5, 6.5. I would definitely be taking that with the Bulldogs.
Yeah, I think this region is one of the most wide open regions. Like I could legitimately see any team making it through, and mainly because NC State is the most inconsistent team, in my opinion, in the entire nation. They can come out, they can show up, and they'll be maybe a top 5, top 10 team. That's how good they can be. But then they can also show up and just complete no-show. And it's like, how is this team even ranked? And you have no idea which NC State team you're going to get, especially because they don't really have an ace that they can go to or, even a second guy. They just have a bunch of decent pitchers. So you really have no idea which NC State team you're going to get. So that's why I do think Bryant's a good look here.
Yeah, I'm waiting for that run line / total to come out tomorrow. Of course, it's 8:00 Eastern time, and the games kick off in 16 hours, and we don't have anything. Figures. Georgia Tech, UNCW. I don't have anything. Probably going to skip that one. I don't think it really matters because the winner is going to be Georgia in that region. Illinois, Indiana State. I don't have anything. I think that's Kentucky's region. Also, to think it doesn't matter because Kentucky's coming out of that. Niagara, Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State's a minus 1,600 favorite. Nothing there. This is a game I like. I think it's probably the 6th best 2-3. Is Kansas State, a team I thought was a team that was on my top 8 Omaha slate coming into the year against Louisiana Tech, throwing Luke Nichols. I laid it with Louisiana Tech. They have Luke Nichols. They have an advantage at pitcher. It's a scrappy Diamond Dogs team. And Ethan Bates has been probably the 2nd or 3rd best closer in the country this year behind Charlie Bielenson. What do you know? Tyson Abers of K-State coming in, was the best closer. He's had a little bit of a down year, but it's the battle of 2 of the best closers in the country. I'm going with the Diamond Dogs. Yeah,
I'm right with you there. Kansas State is a very inconsistent team as well. I believe they have Jackson Wentworth going, and he's been good, but he's kind of, he's showed up, especially this last month or so of the season. But other than that, for K-State, they don't have too much going for them in their bullpen and their pitching staff. Like you mentioned, Tyson Neighbors is supposed to be one of the best relievers, if not the best reliever in the nation coming into this season, but he's had injuries. He's really struggled this year. So, he hasn't been as effective. And Louisiana Tech they're a team that's been around. They've got experience being in this position. I think it shows a lot why they're favorites here. And Kansas State's lineup, they're solid, but they can no-show, especially against good pitching staff. So I like Louisiana Tech too.
Tulane, Oregon State. I mean, Tulane's a tough little scrapper. They were like 19 in a billion last year and got in because they won their conference tournament. And then this year they're actually good and also won the conference tournament. Oregon State, I believe they've come out and said that they're going to keep their usual rotation, which means Aiden May would go. I don't know if that's a smart move or not, but it is a winnable region, even with a couple, sneaky little smaller programs coming in. Grand Canyon, Arizona. I thought it'd be noteworthy with Clark Candiotti going, but Grand Canyon, I think, elected to not throw Daniel Avidia, which I don't really understand. Avidia's been solid this year, but he is their guy, man. But I don't have anything there. And then lastly, do you see Fresno State getting upsetting UC Santa Barbara? I don't know if Ryan Gallagher's going for Santa Barbara. Haven't seen a confirmation. Maybe it's Gutierrez. But is Fresno State here a candidate to upset Santa Barbara, or do you think the Gauchos steamroll?
I don't think so. I was on UCSB to make Omaha from before the season. So I'm probably a little bit biased in this cap, but in the same time, like UCSB is built for this type of tournament. They have so many good pitching options. Matt Ager was a preseason All-American. He's been pitching. I mean, the thing is, he hasn't had that bad of a season. He hasn't had a good season by his standards whatsoever, but he's been beaten. He's not even in the starting rotation anymore. That's how good the rest of their pitching staff has been, and that's how many options they have. They also have not lost at home this season. They're 25-0, I believe you said. I know they haven't lost this season. I don't remember how many wins exactly they've had. But I just don't see UCSB losing this game at home.
Okay. One more. I guess I forgot to write it down. There's a billion games. It must have escaped me. This is the game I really liked is Vanderbilt, who's now down to -145 against Coastal Carolina, who's +114. Do you think Coastal could steal this, or is this the Vandy boys all the way?
No, I like Vandy here. I think the only angle that you could look at for Coastal Carolina at this point is their coach is retiring. That narrative, their team wants to win for them because Vandy is they have the better lineup, in my opinion. They've been hitting better. I mean, Coastal to start the season, they were hitting better, but they've gone ice cold lately. And Coastal doesn't really have any pitching options that you can rely on. Whereas Vandy, they don't necessarily have the ace that they've had in the past, but they have a lot of very good pitching options. So I think that's definitely Vandy's to lose right there.
No doubt. We kind of surpassed the High Point, Clemson, Kentucky, Western Michigan. Like we didn't touch those games just because there's no real reason. They're huge favorites. But so far for this week, and pending on what else we get out, I'm going Vandy money line -155. That's what I gave it out at a couple days ago. I like TBU -150, Nebraska -105. I got a couple bad prices just because I had to get it early on a different sports book. Louisiana Tech -140 and Evansville quarter unit play money line +220 at ECU. John, thank you so much for taking the time, and we'll look to get you back on this weekend when we start talking a little bit more about the super regionals.
Yeah, appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks so much, guys, for listening. Don't forget to follow John at John Bollman and me at _JohnnyVTV. We'll be giving out our plays and thoughts all weekend long. Best of luck this week, guys. Hope you win a lot of money. And remember, a lot of times the regional future prices are better than the games themselves. Best of luck. We'll talk to you soon.